Today, we are honored to welcome Stephen Paul Edwards to the show today. I'm very excited about this. He is an author, and he talks about so many different things in terms of health and wellness. But ultimately, getting the foundation of emotional stress is really important in our lives. Like, so we have so many things in our lives that are getting in the way of becoming the greatest versions of ourselves. It's kind of like this thing in the background, right? We have a computer, we have all these things draining our battery, right? Now, what is that in your own life? Like getting the foundation of these things so we can actually optimize our energy and really take control of our health and wellness. And I'm really happy to have him on today to basically take control of our mind in many ways as well, because we have so many temptations and things that can get in the way, right? So just being on point with that is so important. So I'm very happy to have him on. How are you doing today, man?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you very much for having me on the show, Anthony. I'm really excited about this, as we were just talking about.
100%, man.
Yeah.
So I'm very curious to hear your story and how you got into wellness and being an author and everything you're doing today.
Yeah, sure. Well, it's been a journey, kind of like you, right? It's a journey. It's not an overnight. It's not a Sartori moment. It kind of goes over time. But my background really came through personal development. I worked with Tony Robbins, and I used to travel around the country, getting people to go see him. Right, that was the position, and so I learned a tremendous amount from him, and he introduced me to other, more spiritual teachers. Right, so and there's a lot of spiritual stuff in what Tony teaches as well. But this is going back a ways, right? Like Deepak Chopra, Wayne Dyer, James Redfield, Neil Donald Walsh. And many others that you may not remember because they might have been before your time. But that was what got me interested. I was an avid reader, which before then I really wasn't, right? So I read literally over the next sort of 5-10 years, hundreds of books. And some of it started to seep in, right? Because, when you read a book, it's like you can't remember what you read most of the time. And I used to read like 10 pages and then, my mind would drift off and I go, I got to go back and read those 10 pages again. But eventually I started to absorb it. At least some of it. And so I went on this journey. Then I started teaching for myself and teaching these mind, body, spirit events, getting into fire walking, which I learned from Tony and other things. So that was the start of it. And then, so fast forward a little bit, I got involved in real estate and speaking about real estate and investing. And then I met this woman. Right? It's like, okay, all right, now we're getting into it, right? So I met this woman who completely captivated me, right? And she was not into any of that. She would say she was, but realistically, practically she wasn't. And so, and you talked about health and wellness and fasting and juicing and all those things. I was doing all that, meditating, the whole 9 yards, working out. But she didn't do any of that. So rather than me pull her, what you might say, up the ladder, she pulled me down the ladder, right? And I kind of gave up myself to have her in my life, right? So I never drank. So when I was with her, I started drinking. I stopped doing the things that made me who I am. And so she became what I call my magnificent obsession or my heroine, right? I became addicted to her, sex, all the things you do not want to have in your life normally. And it was a toxic relationship. But what I realize is sometimes you need to go through that to discover who you really are. And, people would say to me, you shouldn't even be in the same state as her, let alone the same room, right? She's, crazy and so on and so forth. But when you're in there, when you're in it, and I had the same conversation with people in my life too, that person's not good for you, so on and so forth. But you realize that it's okay. That person is meant to go through that and they need it. They need it to discover more about who they really are. And if you prevent them or try, if you try and prevent them or even prevent them from doing it, it's just going to happen somewhere else in their life, right? And you could end up playing whack-a-mole, which I think some of us do to some degree. We have an experience and we tend to put it on an outside person or outside events instead of recognizing that we drew that experience into our lives. There's a reason for that person to be there and to get what you need from it. So, things that happened were pretty crazy. So, but yet I would just forgive her and we'd start over again. And so, so it was a chance for me. I spent most of my life running away from who I am. I had for me, and I don't want to compare myself to anybody else, but I had for me, what was a traumatic experience growing up. And so I just couldn't stand being at home So I was always trying to get away from home. But what I didn't realize is I'm my home. So when I did move away from home, I wasn't happy. So I had to get away from me, right? And what do they say? Wherever you go, there you are, right? And so that was that was something I was never going to be able to do, right? And I would go to different places and I'd feel the same way. And I'd be like, it's not this place then. I need to be somewhere else, right? And so I ended up traveling. So when I was working with Tony Robbins, I lived in, I think, about 25 of the 50 states at one time or other. And I've been in 48 of the 50 states. So that kind of tells you something. So then what happened was I went through this extraordinary experience, and then there ends up being 2 women involved at the end. And the third book is a trilogy. I knew I wanted to write the book, but it's a pretty... it would be a difficult book to write if you're in a relationship with somebody, right? Because you're talking about you had this relationship with a beautiful supermodel, you were living in a mansion, there was a sex room, you went all over the world together doing crazy stuff. And whoever you was probably thinking, I don't want to be with this guy. This isn't what they would want to be experiencing. And then to go out and promote the book and they're with you or living their life with you, it would be tough. So about 3 years ago, I was in a relationship, broke up, and I just said, you know what? I'm not going to be in a relationship for a while. I'm going to take some time, for the first time in my life, to self-reflect, to look back on my life. Even though I'd been journaling, I never read the journals, which was a pointless exercise. So I started to really reflect on my life, and I started to write the first book, and it just took off from there. It was just like me. The release of just bringing all this out, putting it into a book, owning it. And it was a very freeing, it was cathartic, but it was also very freeing because if you get a chance to read the book, you're going to go, holy shit, this guy went through some crazy stuff and he created all of it. And I say that at the beginning, So just, after you've written that kind of thing, there's nothing left for you to hide. So you can be free. Right? It gave me a sense of freedom that I'd never had before, Anthony, So that was the Reader's Digest version of it. If you want to hit on any particular points or ask me any questions.
That's fascinating, man. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. So it sounds like in the beginning, you kind of went on this personal development path, right? You're kind of like bettering yourself. You're into all this personal development material and you're getting better, right? And you're on this path. But then you meet a woman, right? And it's like, oh, maybe I'm going to go this way instead, right? So it's like, it kind of pulled you off the path.
It's what makes it funny, right? And the book is funny, it's tragic, it's everything you could imagine, right? But it's one of the things that makes it funny is that I had all that past experience. I knew better, right? But I was just so drawn to this experience. I was so drawn to this woman and how, one of the things that's interesting about her, we're both crazy, by the way. We're literally both crazy. And I could talk about the mental side of it all and the mental illness side of it all that eventually came into it. But I was drawn to the excitement and I was drawn to her authenticity. She never pretended to be anything else than she was, And it was like you either liked it or you didn't, which is pretty unique, right? It gave her a certain power, confidence, and allure, right? In addition to the fact that she was stunningly beautiful because she was a former supermodel, right? And she was very tall. I love tall women, right? And her father was a billionaire. So she didn't care about money at all, right? She could care less, which was nice because I was making it, at that time, not now, but about that time, I was making $1 million a year. So I could find women, but most of them wanted to be with me because of what I had or what I was earning, right? Than be with me, right? So I felt like, wow, here's a beautiful woman that wants to be with me for me. At least I thought that initially. But that's when the craziness starts, because in actual fact, she'd had a very traumatic childhood. And her father was not physically abusive, but mentally. And not because he wanted to be necessarily, but just he was emotionally devoid. He was a genius, right? But he had no emotion. So from her perspective, she saw that as not being loved, right? That he didn't love her. And he put her in a mental asylum when she was 16 and she couldn't get out. So that and a bunch of other things made her very angry at her father. And if the girl is angry at her father, she's angry at every man on earth, right? So she had this anger towards men because she didn't think she was lovable, because if your father can't love you, who's going to love you? And then second of all, she's so beautiful. So in her mind, men just wanted her for her looks and to sleep with her, right? Which to some degree was true, but beliefs manifest, right? We create our reality. So she created that reality over and over because she made it very difficult to connect with her because she was always holding men back, which created the very reality that she was trying to avoid. So men just slept with her and went, I can't live with that. And they moved on, right? So, yeah. And stop me anytime you want.
That was great,
Does
man.
that answer the question?
Yeah, definitely. It's a very interesting observation, right? Because we tend to make decisions out of our past experiences, right? And we don't really understand why we're getting these certain results. And it's not until we become aware of these things, which is what we talk about. It's like not only do we get to transform it, we kind of get to move beyond that in a sense. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense for sure.
Yeah. And so, and she also was very intelligent. She got her intelligence from her father. She was a brilliant mind. And so we would have these experiences where we would use the sex room for like 3 days. Now, we're not 100% there for 3 days, but we would have our session, which would go longer because, for whatever reason, I'm not going to get into that right now, but in between each session, we would go outside of the house, sit by the pool in the fire pit, and we would play backgammon. From our first date, for me first being introduced to her, I found out she liked backgammon, which I do too. So it became something we did together a lot, and we played for hours sometimes. But it was also our time to connect, to talk to each other, to have conversations. And those conversations would go pretty deep. And, we would talk about our sexuality, our previous sexual experiences, our desires, our dreams. But we'd also talk about things like monogamy. Is monogamy a good thing? And we would have long conversations about that. And she used to blow me away. She used to say, I'm from the future. And she really was, or her mind was, which I think I am a little bit, but she was beyond me. We're both Aquarians, right? We were actually born a day apart, right? So I was born on the 10th of February. She was born on the 11th, which is pretty crazy. So we had a lot of connection there. But we both had mental illness. So when I was a kid, I was bipolar. We call it manic depressive back then, right? And we didn't know anything about it. So I actually ended up in what you would call an asylum, right? A mental health center. We would call that now. But and they gave me ECT, electric shock treatment, right? Which I don't know they ever do anymore. I believe they're starting to talk about bringing it back, which is crazy. So I had all these experiences. So I got into a euphoric state, ended up in this mental illness facility. And then they gave me ECT and a bunch of drugs, which brought me down, right? It took the euphoria and put way down below that. So I suffered the consequences of that by being depressed for 2 or 3 years. I barely could move out of a chair, right? I couldn't be with anybody. I couldn't hold a conversation. I woke up every day with this sinking feeling in my stomach. And you'd first wake up and then in the first few seconds you go, oh, is it gone? And then it'd be there. The feeling would just be there, the weight, the feeling in your stomach. So my life has been just like that, highs and lows, and learning how to live with both, right? And when I first was told I had this problem, this mental illness, the medication back then was, I lost you, I think. Are you still there, Anthony?
Yeah.
I think you're just reconnecting again. Okay, good. So they gave me lithium and it made me feel weird. And I thought I'd rather just not take anything and live with the ups and downs, which I did most of my life, up until quite recently, actually. But now there are better drugs and I'm stable now, at least so far. Right? So that's helped that. But, she also had contracted a mental illness, which I knew nothing about, even though I worked with Tony Robbins and, he studied every psychological aspect you can imagine. But he never talked about this disorder, and I didn't know anything about it. And I didn't know anything about it until we were way into the relationship. And it was kind of like, if you want to call it a coincidence, but you and I know there are no real coincidences. It's all happens because of our thoughts, words, and actions on vibration, and we draw these things in, right? So a friend of mine who was in the book a lot, and he's kind of my best buddy. He was my savior so many times to help me out of situations that I got into. It was Christmas, and he brought a Christmas present over for me. And it was, you can buy those bundles of books, right? So there's about 6 books in this little bundle, and they were all about psychology. But one of them caught my eye, and it was called, I Hate You, Don't Leave Me. And it was about, and as I'm reading this book, it's like, this is her right here. This is explaining why she is the way she is. And the book is one of the first books written on borderline personality disorder, which basically has every psychological problem you can imagine all rolled into one person. And when I got the book and I read it from cover to cover the same day I started to read it. It says in the book that borderline personality disorder is treatable. What I interpreted that to mean is it was curable. And it isn't. It's not. And so these, people with borderline personality experience extreme emotional feelings. And it can be in the space of an hour. They can love you at 11 o'clock, and by 12 o'clock, they hate you. I love you, so I hate you, don't leave me. It's constantly going from these two. And it's called splitting. Everything comes in a black and white. They either love you or they hate you. There's no middle ground. And they have tremendous paranoia. And they think you're doing things that you're really not, which always used to make me feel like, how could you think that, about me? It's not. It's just this issue. So in the end, people will say, well, obviously she got to the point where you just couldn't live with her anymore because she's so crazy. And I say, no. I loved her so much that I would go through that, but I wouldn't go through it for the rest of my life. And in the end, when I realized it would never change and that there was nothing I could do. And also, Anthony, I was losing my sanity. I'm not kidding. I was losing my mind, right? And so in the end, I realized I had to let her go. And it was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life, But I understood that if I didn't, I'd already lost myself a lot and I needed to get myself back. Otherwise, she would destroy me, right?
Wow. Yeah. It's profound insight, man. It's like we tend to be attracted to these things based on what's going on inside, right? And then we kind of we express that externally. And it can really destroy our lives, as you mentioned. It's like, I think these things come into our life in a sense to kind of heal, right? Because if we don't transform them, we're just going to stay in that perpetual state and it'll get worse and worse and become this vicious circle in a sense.
Exactly. And you don't realize when you're in it that it is getting worse and worse, right? That you're losing more and more of yourself. It's like what do they say? When they cook a lobster, they put it in a pan of warm water, right? And little by slow, they turn the temperature of the water up, but it doesn't recognize it, just falls asleep, right? And then it's cooked. I don't know if that's a very good analogy, but it's kind of the same kind of thing, right? You don't realize you're cooking or being cooked. And in the end, it can be absolutely too late when there is no way back, right? And so I could see that happening. I could see that coming, right? And so I managed to get out before that. And it was good for me that I did. We used to break up quite frequently, as you can imagine, because it used to get really tumultuous. But when we broke up, I would immediately go back to, juicing, meditating, doing all the things that I was doing before. And then we would get back together and we would go out the window again, So there's a number of things that I hope that people get out of reading the book. There's a lot of depth to it that doesn't show immediately. But one of the things was that it's okay. Who you are is more than okay. You're enough. There's nothing you need to feel ashamed about. There's nothing to feel insecure about. Accept yourself. Not everybody's going to love you. Not everybody's going to like you, no matter what you do. And I think sometimes we're made to believe that's what we've got to make happen. We've got to be so nice that everybody loves us and likes us. It's never going to happen. And the sooner you accept yourself, then you're going to be around other people who accept you for yourself. Now, I don't want to sound like I've suddenly had, I'm awakened to the point where I'm constantly in a state of nirvana or enlightenment, because it doesn't work that way. I have had moments of complete bliss and complete awakening, but it doesn't last, and it's not supposed to, because everything is on a wave, right? Frequency, vibration is a wave. So we come in and out of it. And what I was interested about when I was listening to you talk to, is it Justin? Justin Walker? Yeah. Justin Walker. He was saying something that I would challenge, and I'd be interested to hear what you said. What you say. He said we are human beings having a spiritual experience. And I believe it's the other way around. I believe that we are spirits having a human experience.
Yeah.
And they're all in a state of forgetfulness. We have to forget who we really are. Otherwise, you couldn't have this experience. Because if you fully remembered who you are and you were fully enlightened, what would the point? What would be the point, right? So I believe that we're on a journey back to the beginning, that we're on this journey to enlightenment. But in order to have the journey, you have to forget those things, right? And so we're all on the cycle, the circle of life, and that nobody's better than anybody else. Nobody's more or less enlightened than anybody else. In our essence, we're all enlightened, but we've chosen to forget so we can have this experience. And so with that belief, you can be with anybody, and it doesn't matter. They're not better than you. You're not better than them. It doesn't matter how much money, doesn't matter how much materialism they have or you have. You're still not better than anybody else. And I can tell you, I've had some really profound experiences. I think Justin was talking about different dimensions, right? There were all these different dimensions. There's an infinite number of dimensions, right? And we are all living in our own world, right? I mean, literally, you're making up your world. And he said a great thing when he said, you're either living in your own world or your own mission, vision, and purpose, or you're living in somebody else's. It's one of the two, right? So if you can make your own life the way you want it to be, but we interact with each other. And so, I spend time with homeless people. I spend time with multimillionaires, but I treat them the same. I don't look down on anybody, and you don't either, I know. But sometimes I'm in that situation and I'm talking to, say, a homeless person, and I see that enlightenment in them. And they recognize it themselves. They don't say anything, but you could just see the light went on, right? But we're not there, I don't believe, we're not there to try and pull someone into more awareness. We're there just to enjoy each other in the moment. And there's always a gift in it for both people. Just my belief, right? So where that goes is we shouldn't force more awareness on somebody else. So, for example, as looking at it on a bigger scale, like we go to other countries and we try and get them to believe in democracy or our way of living, but they're not ready. They're not there, and we are stopping them having their experiences that will get them there. We're trying to cut out incredible things that we've gone through to get where we are, and we're trying to get them to be where we are in one giant leap. You can't do it, right? And nor should you, which is why some of these cultures, they will kill you by trying to get them to believe what you believe, right? Because you're not meant to do it, and they can't get there in that instant. I don't know if that makes any sense, but anyway, that was right off the top of my head, so I don't know where that went. But that's what I believe. And so I was maybe more accepting of her behavior and the things that went on than somebody else might be. But again, I have no regrets. It was one of the most amazing periods of my life. And I say in the book, because I actually write it in the first person, I'm talking to the audience or the reader all the time, so I'd say, I'd say things like, okay, well, what would you do? Right? here you go. Then I'd go, but listen, if you think I should have broken up with her, you wouldn't be reading this book and having such a great time now, would you? Right? So it all happens for a reason and how you look at it.
100%, man. Yeah. You kind of mentioned like this ebb and flow of reality, right? We kind of get in the flow of things and then things happen, right? And that's why it's so important to be resilient and kind of be able to bounce back to that state of excellence, right?
Yeah.
And just, you also mentioned just being able to see the light in everyone, no matter where we are, and understanding like having a spirit of service as well. It's like
Yeah.
really wanting others to win and kind of also being a guide and a coach in a sense, right? It's like understanding that it's about guiding people to their own answers so then they can kind of be empowered within themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I used to do these mind, body, and spirit events. And then when I would do the event, people would come up to me at the end, probably like you, and say, I want you to be my coach, right? Or I want you to be my therapist or whatever. Now, the thing is, you got to be careful about doing that, right? Because you could get into serious trouble if someone has a complaint or whatever, that you can really have some problems. So I knew I wasn't going to spend 7 years learning how to become a psychologist, right? So what I discovered is if you have a PhD in spiritual counseling, that gives you license to be able to do a form of therapy, right? To be able to counsel people. And that's why I went down that path, so that I could offer that with licensure, right? And you also become, you can do weddings and funerals and that kind of thing, which I've done a few of. But that was why I did that. So I could counsel people. So I also did that as well, and still doing it to some degree, so that I can be of service. Because, and I think you feel the same way, we've been very fortunate to learn some pretty profound things. And you got to pass it forward. You got to pay it forward, as we would say today, right? For a number of reasons. One of them is that the secret to living is giving, right? And also you're reinforcing it for yourself, right? So as you teach, because you can't do it all, and you forget a lot of it, right? So when you're sharing it with other people, your brain is going, I need to do that too, right? I got to remember to do that. I know I'm supposed to do it, but I'm not doing that. So I got to go back to doing that again, So, and that reminds me of a phrase that Tony Robbins used to use all the time. He said, sometimes we know what to do. We just don't do what we know. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, profound, man. It's really about like being of service, right? And then kind of being the model, right? Because then we can actually be an example for other people and do what is necessary. I just find that like every single day, like I wake up, I have an opportunity to get better, right? And it's about knowing that all of our decisions, they don't just affect us, right? It's about affecting everyone around us. And I think that can be very inspirational to take positive action every single day. And because we're going to have these things throughout our day, whether it's temptations, whether it's challenges, and we have an opportunity in that moment. How are we going to respond, right? And in that moment, we're going to move our life forward or we're not, right? And so every single day, it's a challenge, but it's an opportunity as well.
Absolutely. One of the things also that I loved about, I learned a lot from Tony Robbins. Obviously, it was a profound experience, and he's an amazing person. And all the things he teaches, I won't say all the things, but most of the things he teaches, he practices. And so now his condition, his mind and his body and spirit, it's unbelievable, right? How incredible he has become as a result of those things. But he also talks about having, the space in your life to not have to be so disciplined. So he calls it, every week you should have what he calls a zag day. And you can just eat whatever you want. You can do whatever you want. You can feel the freedom to do all that because, if you eat chocolate, you have candy, or you do something, for one day, your body can handle that. It's okay. And then get back on the wagon again. And I kind of like that. I think that was a good thing that he put in, because for some people, it's just too much to be that disciplined every single day of their life. It becomes almost like a prison, right? Because got to do this today, got to do that today. Whereas if you can take a day off, right, it doesn't make it seem so daunting. But that's just one idea. It doesn't mean it's right for anybody particularly, but it was good for me, I think. And having this experience was taking more than a day off, right? It was taking a long period of time off to let go of it all. And, you made me think of that in that it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to fall off the wagon. It's okay to see your own frailties, right? And own them. One of the things for me was, working for Tony, because he is so perfect that you felt you had to maintain those levels of perfection, which is not easy. It's you get to the point where you're trying to be somebody that isn't really you. And that goes back to what I said earlier. Then you're hiding yourself away from people because you think they won't accept you for who you are. And this is just me. When I would get on stage, I think I got to be perfect because I'm teaching this stuff. And therefore, I got to show these people that I'm doing this all the time. And like I said, that was tough. It made you, sometimes you can be on a stage and there could be 2,000 or 3,000 people in the audience and you'd feel alone, right? And people would put you on a pedestal because you're on stage, right? And you're teaching these principles, which makes you sound amazing, right? And so people are drawn to you. But you would feel, or I would feel sometimes like, yeah, but you love the person I'm being for you to use as a gauge, but you don't know who I really am. And so when people would say, oh, you're amazing and things like that, I would feel like, no, I'm not. I'm just teaching things. If you actually knew me in real life, you'd know that I'm a real person, that I'm just like you. I have frailties, I have fears, and all those things that we all have. I don't believe there is a destination. I believe it's a journey, right? And I never say I know everything. I never say I've arrived, because I haven't. I've gone through a lot in my life. This book, this memoir, is an example of that. But in no way am I fully healed as a result of this. But I'm further along than I was before. Does that make sense? And I notice things now that I didn't notice before because of that behavior and because of those experiences.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. It's like, yeah, it's not about being perfect. It's about progress and understanding that challenges are part of the process, right? And
that's a great phrase, man. I'm going to steal that. It's not about being perfect. It's about progress. That's a book title right there, man. You got to write that book. That's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like challenges are like basically designed to forge our character and to live the life that we're meant to lead, right? And it's like our perception can become our reality. Like, what are we doing in order to kind of transform these things? Because a lot of us, we just kind of get stuck. We don't know how to move forward. So just being able to kind of take control of these things is so important.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And you've touched on this, I know, I can't remember exactly where it was in your interview, but you were talking about our thoughts, right? And how creative they are. So I believe that our thoughts, words, and actions are our 3 creative skills, that we create our reality through those things. So if we become more aware of our thoughts, if we become more aware of our language, because a thought is a thing. It is a thing. It's a vibration. It creates a frequency that connects with the universe that then manifests that when you think it over and over again, consistently. And our words are another level of vibration. They're a vibratory field of energy. And our actions, we're moving through consciousness, right? The molecular structure around us, it's not like we have a body and it's separate. We're connected to everything. So as I move my hand, if you move your hand in front of your face, what do you feel? You feel the air moving. You're moving energy, right? And although it's much more subtle, the same thing is happening when you think something. You're sending a message out to the universe. When you say a word, if you put your hand in front of your mouth and speak, you can feel energy. You can feel the vibration, right? So what I believe, and I think you're saying as well, is that what we need to do is control our thoughts, be aware of what we're thinking, because those thoughts are creative. And if people think that they are worthless, that is what is going to show up in their life. And if they think they're worthless, they're going to speak words, oh, I'm just not good enough, or I could never do that, or it's okay for him, but that's not for me, I couldn't do that. In other words, you're saying that person is better than you in a certain way, which then creates the insecurity. And then you start to do things that would reinforce that belief. But if we can change those 3 things, change the way we think about ourselves, change the things we say about ourselves and other people. And we're going to take action in a different direction towards those thoughts and words so that we can activate. I think you said it at one time, everything we need is within us, right? It's all here. It's all right here. What we're going to do is activate it, right? And once we can activate it, and I think you were saying, we're all capable of doing extraordinary things. Everybody, right? And so what you and I believe in doing is trying to help those people that are trying to get along the journey, help them along the journey a little bit, and be okay with the people who are going to go, that's garbage, that's a bunch of bullshit, that's never going to do anything. They're going to say that, right? They're going to say that, and just be okay with that, and just say, okay, it's not for them for right now, but that's okay.
Yeah, 100%. Just to focus on the mission, right? It's not about like getting caught up on all these distractions. It's like focus on the North Star and what is important, right? And you know what it is. It's we just kind of get caught up in these things, but just look at it as part of the process. Like what's in the way becomes the way, and you just cannot keep moving forward.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was talking earlier and said I was doing extremely well. Well, extremely well financially for me, coming from nothing as a kid, right? To be making $1 million a year and living in a mansion. It was pretty impressive to me, right? But that happened as a result of doing something I love to do. It was never my goal to make a ton of money. I had a resentment towards money because my father was that way. So he never had time for his family. And so that obviously had an effect on me as a young boy. So I was like, I'll never just do things for money. And I had many opportunities to do that. I did it because I love it, but I didn't really care about the money. I would say all the time, people say, you got these beautiful cars, you got this beautiful home, you're making all this money, and I say, yeah, I know, but you know what? It'll come and it will go. It will come and go. And I know I'll be the same person when I don't have it as I am today. And maybe I said that too many times because then I didn't have it all, right? But I had more when I didn't have all of that than I had when I had it. So what does that mean? It means I had more of me. I had more freedom. Because when you accumulate possessions, they possess you. They take a tremendous amount of energy away from you. Like you were saying at the beginning about fasting and having more energy because you're eating less food. What is food? It's a possession. It's stuff that you are putting in you. And I'm not saying don't eat. I'm just saying, it's something that is in you that is slowing you down. And so are possessions. They take energy to maintain them, to keep them. When I was in that position, it was $50,000 a month just to live, right? That was my nut every month, right? And now I don't have that. And I have so much more freedom. I'm so much happier than I think I've ever been in my life. So that's why I say to people very often, less is more. Less is more. The less possessions you have, the less you have to worry about, the more freedom you have.
Wow. Yeah. That's powerful, man. Because these things can control us in so many ways, but it's like focus on what matters in our lives and being able to kind of move beyond these things that we think are going to give us fulfillment, but they're really not.
No, they're not. Nothing outside of you. And everyone's heard this. We're not telling anybody that they haven't heard before, but it is true. It is true. But we live in a world that constantly brainwashes people and says, well, if you have this, you are going to be happy or happier. And it's so hard to extrapolate yourself from that brainwashing, right? That there's the next thing someone needs, the next computer, the next person, the next paycheck, the next $10,000 you make. People believe in many cases, not every case, but in many cases that that's what's going to make them happy. And just like you said, it never does. I need another 10,000. I need another car. I need another this, or I need another that. This isn't the right person. I need a different person. I need a different house. And it's never ending. And you're just on a wheel, right? It's never going to end.
Yeah, 100%. So you also talk about
Definitely
emotional stress and how that can kind of like be in the background. We've kind of talked about this a little bit, but it's like, What are these things that we need to become aware of in order to kind of move beyond them so we can have more energy in our lives?
Yeah, that's a great it's a great question. What can we do to handle emotional stress easier? And if I knew the answer to that, I would be a I would not be a I wouldn't be a millionaire, I'd be a billionaire, right? But there are some things that you and I both know we can do, right? To make it easier. But we still have stresses, there's things that still go on. And we forget some of the things we know. I mean, I have a belief that nothing happens to you, everything happens for you. That's a great belief. Sounds amazing. Do I remember that all the time? No, I don't, right? But when I do get out of balance and I get upset about something that's happened, by then coming back to that belief means I don't stay out of balance for very long. And I won't let myself go into play the blame game or the pity game or the victim game. I go, okay, I get it. I created this. I'm responsible for it. So what do I want to do differently not to draw this kind of experience back into my life again? So I think that taking responsibility and being accountable for what goes on in your life means that you don't get out of balance as often. It's going to happen. But what will happen is as you really begin to own that belief, those kind of things will happen less and less, right? In other words, you will feel more in balance more of the time than you did before when you just thought, oh, she did that to me or he did that to me or, God let this happen to me and God doesn't love me anymore or whatever it is. It's not. It's you. You're creating it.
Yeah. Power of our beliefs is so foundational, right? Because we believe in these things that may disempower us, but it's not until we start to shift these things that our actions change, we're just going to change the results.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, it sounds easy, but I'm not sure if it was, I think it might have been Justin that was saying, look, we have gone through a lifetime, most of us, of being conditioned to believe these things, which we first of all have to let go of all those things to bring the right beliefs into our lives that are going to take us in the direction we really want to go. It's not easy. It's not easy, because some of these beliefs that we've known since we were children, they're like glue, right? And you're trying to get out of that stickiness, that glue. And there's party that doesn't want to let it go because you're scared about what is true, right? If you're taking about all these things that have been the foundation of my life and the truths that I've lived by, and you're saying those things are not true, well, what does that mean? Now we're on really uncertain ground, right? And so people get scared when they're uncertain, right? People want a certain level of certainty in their life. So when you take away the floor, the people are like, well, what do I have to hang on to, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We hold on to that fear and it's like, it's kind of like a comfort zone, right? It's like basically this is what that we know. It's just our paradigm and how we're used to living, right? So it's like until we can see another way of being, it's very difficult to change. But
Yeah.
like I said, it's like that process forges your character in a sense. You kind of live the life that you're meant to lead.
Yeah. And, remembering where you came from, that at one point, you were new to all this, right? And I hear you talk about that. It's a journey, and so we've got to be compassionate to the people who are just starting out on that journey that have made that decision, right? You can't make someone start on the journey. They've come to that point in their life. It's like standing on the edge of a diving board, 50 feet in the air, and you're now going to jump off into the water, and you got to trust that the water is going to break when you hit it so that you're going to be fine, right? But it's scary. It is. It's like jumping off. I could also use the analogy jumping off the cliff or whatever. In some ways, it's a big. Well, again, I think it was you that said if you're brave to do it, then there's fear involved, right? You can't be brave without being scared, right? But that's also where you grow, right? When you get, you were talking about comfort zone a few minutes ago, and I love the quote by Neil Donald Walsh where he says, life begins at the end of your comfort zone. Because it's not until you get to that end of your comfort zone that you now no longer know what's going to happen, right? When you're in your comfort zone, you're comfortable because I know what's going to happen, right? I know what's going to happen because I've been here before. When we get out of our comfort zone, we're going into an area where we haven't been before, and it's scary. But having the courage to do that is where we're going to grow as a human being and as a spiritual being.
Yeah. Yeah. Courage is not the absence of fear, it's having that fear
That's
and doing
right.
it anyways.
Yeah, I forget who said that. Wasn't it like a paratrooper or something? I don't know, but it was someone famous. I can't remember who it was, and I hate that when I can't remember who made the quote. But yeah, I've heard that before. Yeah, courage is not the absence of fear; it's when you're afraid but you do it anyway.
Yeah. Sometimes we mistake that. It's like we think it's like having no fear at all, but it's about knowing it. Like it's knowing your predispositions to things, your tendencies, so you can actually navigate it in a skillful manner.
Yeah. So I have, for whatever reason, I've been a risk taker pretty
Yeah.
much all my life. Maybe it's built into my personality, but the way I look at it is this: look, you're going to have an experience, right? No matter what happens, and you're going to learn from it. So go for it. This isn't a dress rehearsal. This is it. Now, I'm going to tell you, I had some hard falls, some really hard falls. But what I've learned from that is that no matter how difficult that fall is, once you've got up from that, now there's nothing really to fear. That you can do it, and if things do go wrong, you've now proven to yourself through experience that you can pick it up and move on.
Yeah, for sure. So you also talk about health and wellness. Are there any strategies that come to mind that you feel are very beneficial for people to kind of take control of their minds and their overall wellness?
Yes, definitely. Well, as I mentioned, I used to do it with Tony Robbins, who was a health fanatic. So he introduced me to juicing. That was back then. I can't even remember the name of the juicer, but it was like everybody had this champion. I think it was a champion juicer maybe. And you used to grind the stuff up. The carrots, you used to put them in the top and it used to chop them up. And then you'd have to clean the whole thing, right? Anyway, juicing, right, was a big thing. And now I have an emulsifier, right? So now I don't have to throw any of the stuff away. I just take the whole thing and it just chops it up, and I get the external part of the vegetable as well as the water part, which is even better, right? So yeah, meditation is huge. Fasting is huge. I do take a lot of supplements. Most of them probably end up in the toilet. I don't know, but I do feel good. So, I mean, I could go through my cupboard with you right now. I don't remember everything that's in there. I just mix it all together, right? But I do take some creatine. I do take cinnamon, some pretty Q10. I take some protein. I take and I mix it all together with spinach, sometimes cucumber, lemon and lime, in alkaline water. I'm a big proponent of alkalinity, making ourselves as alkaline as we can, because we tend to be very acidic, right? Because most of the foods, like you've talked about, the processed foods are all very acidic. Any processed food is acidic. So alkaline. Now working out. So I work out at least once a day. Now, I'm not working out like Arnold Schwarzenegger, but I do work out every day. I do some weights and I do some cardio every day. So I stay in good shape, I work on my core, I do my stretching, and all those things, which is very important. Whatever age you're at. I mean, I'm not a spring chicken anymore, right? But I do take care of myself and my mind. So I'm constantly reading. I listen to a lot of podcasts. So I'm constantly challenging my mind and challenging my beliefs. And I have a very strong sense of purpose, which I think is crucial for anybody. Once you lose a sense of purpose for your life, your body, your life is going to deteriorate. And they've done studies about this. When people lose a sense of purpose, whatever it is, like people work all their lives and then they retire and then they die. Why? Because they got no sense of purpose anymore. How am I contributing? So one of the things I learned from Tony is that we have what he calls the 6 human needs. Now, these are not things we want. These are things that are needs that we have as human beings. We talked about one earlier about we need a sense of certainty. Now, the first 4 are juxtaposed, right? So we need a sense of purpose. We need a sense of certainty, but we also need, number 2, variety in our lives. So we're not living Groundhog Day. It's not the same thing every day. So we need some variety. Now, how much certainty you need and how much variety you need are going to differ, right? It's going to be a little different for each of us, right? So variety is scary, more scary for some people. And so they tend to want more certainty. For some people like me, I love variety. I love every day of my life to be different. But I get certainty from other things, right? So that's the first two. The third one is we need a connection. We need to feel connected to people, right? We're human beings. We're not solitary beings, right? And of course, in prison or in war, one of the worst things that can happen is you put into solitary confinement, right? It's just not something we can deal with for any length of time. So there's connection. And then number 4 is we all need a sense of significance. We need to know that we make a difference in other people's lives. And that's what we gain from significance. So we like to be important. So again, if you get too much connection, you lose significance. And if you get too much significance, you lose connection. So again, trying to balance those two. So let me give you an example, right? So somebody, let's say that people work with at the office, right? Everybody loves Sally, right? But nobody takes Sally seriously because she does whatever anybody wants. She just wants to be loved and liked and feel connection to people. So people tend not to have the same level of respect for Sally as they would for someone who is very significant. Their manager or their boss, they're significant, but they don't have the same level of connection that Sally does, right? People don't feel as connected to them because they keep themselves separate so they have significance. And then you become unrelatable. And then people feel like they can't relate to you. So they don't feel like they want to be connected with you. I don't want to be like you. That's not for me, right? So these are all things that we're trying to balance in our lives, and it's not easy. But the two most important needs we have as human beings are, number 1, the need to contribute. That's why we say the secret to living is giving, not receiving. It's nice to receive things, but it's not nearly as pleasurable as giving. And that's why we say the secret to living is giving, right? And the 6th human need that we have is the need to contribute. The need to contribute to the people in our lives, the people we love, to our community and the world at large. And to the extent you can do that is going to obviously affect your level of fulfillment.
100%. Yeah, having that sense of purpose is so key. Like being able to know what you want and being able to go after it every single day and having a sense of fulfillment. That's so important. Just being able to, as you mentioned, be of growth and be of service. And basically, without a vision, people perish, right? It's like we have all these things in our lives and we just don't know what we want. We don't know what we're going for. And it's not until we actually become aware of these things that we can actually live a life of purpose and reach our full potential.
Yeah, 100%. I call it a mission, vision, and purpose, all 3 together. They're all different, but they all intertwine. So the mission is, what is the accomplishment? What is it you really want to create with this life? Is it, building homes for children? Is it helping the homeless? Is it whatever it is, right? And we all have had experiences that would say, when you've seen things, you go, I'd love to help with that. The problem is very often people don't have the time because they're trying to work to just make a living and get by, and they can barely do that, right? So they don't have the money or the time to do that. It's not that they don't want to. I think it's an intrinsic core level desire that we have to make a difference. I mean, I don't know about you, I've never met anybody who says, I don't want to make a difference. That's the last thing I want to do, right? So we all want to do that, but sometimes it's a challenge. So the mission is what it is you want to do. So it might be, it could be something like, I want to make sure all my kids go to college and that they have a great life and I give them a great foundation for life. That's a great mission, right? It could be that, I want to, build churches, maybe someone's a Christian and they want to build Christian churches in a country that doesn't recognize Christianity. Whatever it is, right? That's the mission. The vision is you got to see it. You know, you got to be able to see it in your mind. And your mind is very creative too. You say, break down the word imagination. Image, nation. The nation of your images, right? Creating the world the way you want it to be, right? And the more emotion that you connect with that vision, the sooner it will become a reality. And so we've got to have a passion. What is passion? Passion is your unique creative energy expressing itself on the physical plane. And when you're passionate about someone, you don't work. It's not a job anymore. It's something that gets you up early, drives you, that you get excited about, and you're not working anymore. You know what I mean? You're just living your life according to what you want it to be and going in the direction you want to go. So mission, vision, and then the purpose is, why? Why? This is your why. Why is this so important to you? And I take people through a process called seven phases of why. So if you ask someone, why are you doing this? Somebody could say, well, because I want to make more money. And then you go, well, why do you want to make more money? And then they go to the next level and they say, well, if I made more money, I could I could pay for my kids' college. Why do you want to pay for your kids' college? And on it goes. When you get to 7 layers, usually the person is crying because they really know the purpose of their life then, right?
Yeah.
But you have to go down. You have to really get into the depth of the emotion and the feeling behind it, Anyway, so mission, vision, and purpose. That's what I encourage people to create, help people create in their life. And once they have that, they have a powerful driving force, right? And you need a driving force.
Yeah, you got to know your why and really connect to that, right? And
yeah, exactly.
Like you mentioned, like the vision and clarity equals power, right? Really knowing
Absolutely.
what you want, having a North Star in your life, man, it will change everything.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing to consider when you're doing that is because people very often have a challenge with commitment. I don't know if I want to commit to that because it might change. It probably will. But you're going to get much closer to whatever your mission, vision, and purpose is as you evolve. Yes, it might change. But what got you there was the mission, vision, that you had in the first place. Of course, it's probably, of course it might change, but that's okay. You don't feel like by creating your mission and vision and purpose now that it always has to be that way. Because you're right. Who you are will change, and maybe it won't be building churches in a country. Maybe it'll become a Buddhist monk. Whatever it might be, it might go off in a different direction. But that's because you have changed, so your idea of how the world needs to be will change too.
100%. All right, Stephen, this has been awesome. I appreciate you so much for coming on the show today, sharing your story with us, your insights, and everything that we do to kind of transform our mind, right? Because the mind is the foundation of our reality. And if without a sound mind, we can't make sound decisions. And our decisions are really kind of the trajectory of where we go in our life. So just being able to take control of that and take back control of our agency and our personal power, that's where it all starts. So I appreciate you.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate you doing the show, and I appreciate you having me on and putting this amazing message out into the world that you have to share. Everything I said is stuff you already know, but it's good to sometimes have it by another person, because I'm sure sometimes, we're teaching to, what do they say? You can never be a prophet in your own land. So a lot of people that listen to you for great information, it's good to have it reinforced sometimes by someone who comes on, and I appreciate you giving me the privilege of being able to do that. Hopefully everybody got something out of this, that it was maybe a little bit of entertaining and a little bit of helpful information that they can apply in their lives. And that would be my prayer.
Absolutely, man. So if people want to get connected with you and all your work, where can we find you?
Well, I live at, I'm just kidding. My website is the best place to go. And that, I also want to just say this, look, and this sounds like, it might sound like I'm bragging, but if something is true, you're not bragging. I'm just telling the truth. And, I know you believe in saying the truth. The book that I've written is incredible. It really is. I mean, I've read it about 20 times and I love it every time. And everybody who's read it has just said it's incredible. So I encourage people to read a copy. But the best way to find me, and you can get a copy for free from my website, right? So is V for Victor, V for Venus, because it's called the Venus Flytrap, the book, right? So VFT23, VFT23.com. And on there are all my social media links, a bunch of free items, some blogs, why I wrote the book and getting into all that and the depth of the book and what my mission, vision, and purpose is. It's a pretty cool website. So I would encourage people to go there if they want to learn more, if they want to become part of our community. That would be the place to go.
Awesome. Thank you, man.
You're very welcome, my friend.